What is up, martial arts fanatics? Welcome back. As always, I am Coach Greg. And today, I got a big announcement for you. But before I get into what I did, I want to talk about and give a little context of why I did it. We live in very unstable times. I think regardless of your political allegiances, I think everybody's looking around and going, things are looking a little dicey. I know I am. And the way that I deal with anxiety, my coping skill is preparation. If I have a plan for the worst that can happen, I don't have to be anxious about the things that could happen because I've already got a plan for it. And so I started preparing and I started writing an SOP for my household on dealing with crisis. And I decided if I'm gonna go through all this work, one, I want a hard copy of the book for myself. I don't want a bunch of loose sheets of paper in a binder. Two, I want to be able to share this with my friends and family. And three, why not make it available for everybody? And if I happen to make a couple bucks along the way, great. But really, I'm making it as a resource that other people might find value in. Because I'm going to be honest, most of the Survivor and Prepper books are garbage. They're the worst. And so I wrote the Nemean Survival Manual. Obviously, the name is showing that it is a complement book to the Nemean fight system. Talk about a couple things that I did when I wrote this. So first of all, this is a book designed for normal people, not paranoid weirdos. It is for normal people who have real concerns and want to take steps, but they want to take the right steps at the right times. Really what this is about is finding out what you need to know, when you need to do it, and how to do it. And that's what I provided. I steered clear of prepping that recommends expensive gear that you don't need. Oftentimes people buy, a $4,000 AR setup that they don't know how to shoot. They buy all these generators and chemical toilets and stuff, and those are not the things that you need. Or they engage in the wrong type of skill training, such as these guys who show themselves they buy a property in the middle of nowhere and they build some hut made of sticks and mud and they show how they can live in it and for a week at a time. Like that's not real bushcraft. That's fantasy survivor. So what I've done is a couple different things here. One is I've steered clear of that and I've tried to outline what are the skills you will actually need leading up to crisis, during crisis, and post-crisis. So the first thing I did was I said, I need to identify what, how, and when, and how much, right? Like I need to figure out, quantify this a little bit for what I need to do so that I don't become some paranoid weirdo. So the first thing I did was I set up some criteria. Now, Lockheed Martin has tried to come up with algorithms in the past to try to identify threats in other countries for foreign nations that are going to collapse. And there's too many things that you can't account for everything. You never know. Some weird things happen and it changes the environment and all of a sudden everything's different. So you can't really do it. But what you can do is this. One, in terms of economic factors, those are very clear factors. Like you can say, economists pretty much all agree. What are the factors for a recession? Slow GDP, consumer confidence, unemployment, all these things, right? You can look at those metrics and those are in there. And then depression is merely a matter of scale for a recession. Then I look at the socio-political stuff and those are a little bit harder. But what I've done is I've outlined, one, what does the CIA look at when they look at other foreign nations as far as whether or not they believe they're going to fail? What are the things they believe are the causes of failure? And also I've looked at historical examples of societies that have collapsed in the past, particularly great empires that have collapsed, like the Roman Empire, the Mongols, and British Empire. There's some pretty consistent things that have happened in each of these situations. And from these, we could put together a set of criteria that allows us to create almost like a DSM. In the same way that the DSM uses criteria and looks at how many criteria you meet, the severity of those criteria, and the duration, we're going to look at that for the illness of our country and see at what point are we along this and how severe is it and how bad are things really getting and how much of my own mental energy do I need to put into this, how much of my time, how much of my money. I don't want to be a crazy weirdo, but I don't want to be unprepared. And understanding how much of yourself to give at what points is a big part of this. And from there, I've been able to identify the skills that you need and the equipment that you need at each of these stages. And say, for example, at DEFCON 4, I have a DEFCON level that I put together for my household to say, how much threat is in there and how prepared do we need to be at each of these stages. So at DEF CON 4, based on the criteria that we've set, is there a 40% or greater chance that society will collapse within the next year, or that we are facing some sort of a collapse or crisis within the next year? And it gives you an idea of what steps you need to take. At DEF CON 3, you're like, okay, there's going to be a 60% or greater in the next 3 months. What do you need to do at this stage? And this goes all the way up to DEF CON 1, which is what, fortification, evasion, things like that. During this process, like I said, I've outlined the skills you actually need, the steps you need to take, the skills you need to learn, the preparation you need to take, and that is what I built my prep list based off of. And while I do talk about things like when to bug out, which it should be a last resort, if you're a marginalized group in an occupied area, well, yeah, it makes sense to do that, especially if you have pre-planned routes and checkpoints and things like that. If you know what kind of forces are in the area, all that stuff to properly evade, and urban and wilderness evasion skills, you have all these things in place, then yes, sometimes bugging out is the right solution, but rarely. It should be the last resort. But more importantly is talking about building a crisis team of people to have a network of people that you can rely on, and what that entails and how you guys can work together. I talk about things like how to properly fortify your home, how to deal with individual combative skills. I don't want to get the whole list of it, but a lot of these are skills that honestly, even if crisis never comes or collapse never comes, they're good for regular crisis skills. First aid, if you never run into any type of a collapse, first aid is an amazing skill set to have. And especially getting deeper into first aid is always valuable. Learning knots, learn 12 knots. It'll save you a bunch of energy in life. It just makes your life a little bit easier. And at the end of the day, if the worst thing that happens is you learn a couple skills and you become a more well-rounded person with a more robust pantry, well, then it's been a win. And personally, I have found that going through this process has taken away much of my anxiety. And so I want to encourage you to check it out. It's called the Nemean Survival Manual. I think it's excellent. I did everything I could to make it as accurate as possible. A lot of this stuff was things I already knew. So I did a lot of research to make sure the things that I knew, that I could expand upon them or grow that knowledge or double check my knowledge. And then for the skills I did not have that I wanted to learn, I spent a lot of time making sure that I was getting the right information and finding out what I needed to do to become proficient in it. And this is not a book that's going to make you an expert in any field. It's not. It's to give you proficiency. So expertise, I encourage you to do it on your own. I also encourage you to add in your own notes to the book. I left notes sections in the book so that you can add in your own learning on top of it, which I encourage you to do. I know I'm going to continue to learn and add in my own notes to my version. But I hope that this is a helpful resource. I hope it helps ease your anxiety. And so then my work here is done, and I did a good job. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.